Goedemorgen. Good morning, everybody. I think some people are trickling in, but I'm going to get started anyways. I think we're on a tight schedule. Hey, hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Kraan, and I'm going to talk to you about developer experience. 7 pillars to invest in, to be more exact. So I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of developer experience, and then I'll lead into the different pillars to consider when you're investing in it. I'll illustrate this afterwards with the use case of Booking.com, where I work, but for that, first I will provide some context on Booking. I trust you're in Europe, so I trust that you're familiar with Booking.com. You kind of know what it is. It's a large leading online travel platform, and we invest heavily in technology to kind of take the friction out of travel. It's quite an old company already, founded about 26 years ago in the Netherlands, bookings.nl. A screenshot of what the website used to look like at the time. It was purchased about 10 years later by an American listed company, Priceline. And it's evolved quite a lot since then. We started off with just accommodations, hotels, apartments, but today you can also book flights, attractions, insurance, car rentals, taxis through our platform. Just a bit of sense of scale, we have about 11,000 people working at Booking globally. A big part of them in Amsterdam in our headquarters. We have about a bit over 2,500 engineers of different flavors. In terms of our business, I think last year we had near 900 million room nights booked by our traveling customers. Our technology environment also evolved quite a bit over these 26 years. And the first 20 years, we're kind of chugging along, really investing heavily in our accommodations business unit. It was all focused on just go forward, innovate, experiment. Don't look back too much. So we just had this one travel vertical. It was all developed in Perl, monolithic code base, very tightly coupled code and business functions. We did a lot of testing in production, like just a bit of testing before you push it out, wrap your change in an experiment, push it to production, flip it on, see if it works, and if it reaches your hypotheses. We had about 500 developers, so it was all manageable environment. Then around 2017, leadership decided to also start exploring and investing in other travel verticals, like attractions was one of the first ones that really kicked in. And this required us to kind of rethink how we build, how we develop, that monolith, tightly coupled code base. Didn't really work anymore when you want to have other verticals next to it. So we start extracting chunks of code out of this monolith, started building services, and that's why we started developing in Kubernetes and also started adopting more modern languages. This area, we then started also doing our first developer experience investments. At the time, I was responsible for our internal Kubernetes environment, getting that off the ground, and we then realized, okay, we're going to develop in Java now also, and maybe also a bit in Node. So these developers that build these services, they need a framework, they need some libraries, they need charts, they need a new deployment tool. So we started creating different initiatives that would serve these new needs. So these were really the first DevX investments. A couple of years ago, around 21, 22, our business started moving into what we call our connected trip strategy, really focused on delivering the ultimate travel experience, where we combine all our business verticals, all our travel products in one roof, one experience for both booking and experiencing your travel. Really to take more friction out of your travel experience. With this, we adopted a cloud-first approach, really hone in on AWS. And then we really realized, okay, now how we've been developing our testing strategy, our environments, how we bootstrap and create services, it's not fit for purpose anymore in this new world. So we realized we need a whole new code workflow and environment set up to go along with this modernization effort. And that led to a much bigger investment in developer experience. I'm currently leading these teams, and we have a bit over 60 people now in our developer experience space, and continuing to grow. And it's also needed because we have over 2,500 engineers developing still on bare metal, bit of virtual machines too in there, still on on-prem Kubernetes and moving to public cloud. So this really requires a great experience to make sure that this works well. And this is the mission of our developer experience team at Booking. Really focus on providing that fast, safe, easy-to-use path from code to production. Really taking out kind of the friction so that our developers can do what they love to do and why they join Booking, and that's to develop and deliver awesome travel experiences. If you look at like different definitions of developer experience around online, it all kind of comes into this same area. You find things related to developer effectiveness, developer happiness, still delivering quality product. And this is also kind of in the DevX realm. There's definitely close connections to this. But yeah, we really care, of course, about our developers going fast, but doing this safe. And ultimately, we believe that if developers can really focus on what they joined for and don't have to tinker away with tools, do a lot of manual work to get their code released, that will make them happier. They enjoy kind of developing travel products, not to manually progress through a canary pipeline or checking logs manually, just to give an example. To build on this more, kind of why developer experience at Booking, there's a big opportunity for developer experience. Think about, let's say you have 500 services with a weekly release cycle. If you were to shave off about 30 minutes of productivity, manual overhead, then you already gain kind of around 1,600 developer hours or 5-6 full-time employees. So there's a big opportunity to invest in this. As I said, fast time to market, very important for Booking. We want to innovate, we want to move forward. So developer experience is really needed for us to support the modernization of our platform. Like if we cannot provide a great developer experience for our developers to work on AWS or to develop Kubernetes services, then this is not going to lead to happiness. This is not going to lead to that faster time to market. We need to be able to respond fast to the market, to the needs of our business, needs of our customers, which also requires this quick iteration. I mentioned, yeah, of course, we want our developers to be very happy. We want to make Booking a great place to work. And because we have this 20 years of working only in Perl and bare metal, kind of the market still kind of thinks often of us, of this big Perl shop. So we kind of want to change also kind of the how people see Booking, how developers see Booking as a great place to work, where you can work with modern tools and have a great experience. So that's also why we think developer experience is critical. And of course, quality is always important. Reliable, safe, catch issues early. I'll go into that a little bit more. Then thinking about kind of the reasons why you would want to invest in a great developer experience, there's some areas then to consider. And these 7 pillars I want to talk to you about. They're not completely unique to Booking, like they apply to our environment, but I'm convinced that this applies to many different types of businesses. And it will really help you when you start thinking about developer experience, when you start thinking about investments, like how to approach this. Now, the first pillar, kind of really the foundation of your developer experience, a customer-focused culture, thinking about your customer. And of course, customers in the sense of developer experience, those are the developers, the engineers in your organization. It's a bit of an open door. You need to talk to them. You need to know what they want, what they need. But for developer experience, as you are very likely going to change maybe the way they work, the tools that they use, maybe even some parts, the freedom that they have to do certain things. Because you're going to be impacting that, it's very important. It's critical to, of course, have your customers, your developers involved in the entire process. Make them part of your assessment, of your design, of your implementation. Create this ongoing feedback loop. They'll be much more willing to adopt what you're going to be changing. Or, of course, you have a better product too, because it's catered to their needs. So yeah, give them an active role in your process. Something that's not always obvious is that you need to treat developer experience as a product. Often I've heard also that kind of DevX-related initiatives, they kind of naturally evolve from engineers spotting challenges, things related to DevOps culture that are being done, like automation that's introduced, which is all great, but at some point you need to elevate this and look at your entire developer experience and really treat it as a product with a life cycle, with a roadmap, of course, with customer feedback loops, with customer engagement, with a lot of active communication about it and evolution. When you treat it as a product, that also means that you need to invest in the product. So it's a job for people. So invest in product managers. If you have large projects that require a rollout across your organization, invest in program management and project managers. Like, this needs to be somebody's job. And engineers, of course, they can help out with this a lot, but it's a skill by itself. Developer experience team, I said we have about 60 colleagues driving that now and growing. We have a product leader in developer experience at Booking that really looks at our entire developer experience as a product. And there's product managers in individual teams that focus on our Java ecosystem or on our CI and CD tooling or coding environment. They all have a product manager responsible for that space, responsible for their engagement and feedback loop with our customers. Another critical part of kind of the foundation, a second pillar, is a shared developer workflow. Shared developer workflow, you can see it as a framework of processes, tools, best practices that really covers your entire software development lifecycle, from design all the way up to release, operations, deprecation. And this is your code workflow, so the different stages that are part of your developer lifecycle, gates that you have in those stages, a quality strategy that indicates what practices you must or should follow. And this is different. This really differs per company, like a banking company or an e-commerce company, a gaming company. They will have a different code workflow, a different kind of quality strategy based on the characteristics of their software lifecycle and regulatory restrictions. Kind of the freedom, the company culture also plays a role in your developer workflow. The amount of freedom that you provide to your developers, that will dictate also the kind of gates that you have and the responsibilities and roles. The DevOps Summit organization asked for all the speakers to reflect on, like, okay, in your transformation, like, where do you start? These two things, this foundation, is where I would have started if I know today what I knew 10 years ago. Well, 8 years ago. I've been at Booking for about 8 years. We definitely started first also with, as I said, when we launched our Kubernetes platform, we focused on the first steps with developer experience, different initiatives, a Java framework, a deployment tool. We didn't start right first with investing in this customer culture, investing in this developer workflow. And these things are critical to build other things on top of. You need this developer workflow clear because it's critical input for the other pillars, things related to tooling, related to freedom, related to automation, metrics. And now I'm going to take a sip. So the next pillars, kind of the middle layer of your developer experience. Unified set of tools. It's kind of an open door. I'm sure you all realize the importance of tools and why you need them. Starting all the way from like language frameworks, all the way to kind of your deployment and your operational tool set. For developer experience, what I've seen is you can go nuts with the breadth of tools, different open source solutions. Let developers pick whatever they want, what works for their personal productivity. This is not always ideal. Important developer experience is that your developers have a frictionless experience, that they can go fast. That means tools need to be well supported. You need to have the right training materials for them. You need to be able to support them well. So this might result in you needing to having to center around a smaller set of tools so that you can guarantee this quality of service to your engineers. And make sure that you can really leverage all the automation that they provide. And here you get into a situation of, hey, what do I build? Also in your developer experience organization, your engineers are costly. They're costly, so you need to be very mindful in terms of buying versus building yourself. Now then, bless you. In terms of kind of the tools, your engineers your organization. You hire smart, costly engineers. So ideally, you want to just get out of their way and let them do what they do best. But still, you need to consider where you give engineers freedom and where you are opinionated about this. Where you want to be opinionated, that is personal to your organization. And that should be very clear in kind of the developer framework, the code workflow that I've talked about. In some companies, security is maybe the most important thing. Things like compliance, quality restrictions, maybe restrictions that will allow you to operate a platform with greater ease. or architectural guidance that you want to embed in how developers work. And things related to efficiency, of you want to reach that high productivity. So you will very likely need to put in restrictions for your engineers. Of course, a great way to do this is by just templatizing a lot of regular tasks. So templatize how you bootstrap a project, how you configure, how you set up your CI/CD pipelines, different operational tasks. There's a lot that you can read online about how Netflix and Spotify have done this through what they call, for instance, golden paths or blessed paths. But this is really a way to simplify bootstrapping, provisioning, configuring, and operating your systems. At Booking, for instance, we've templatized, it's quite common, like the deployment pipelines, where we are opinionated. You have to use Harness as a tool for Kubernetes and AWS deployments. You have to use this set of templates. But then within the templates, we have a small layer that is mandatory settings that we require from all of them so that we can safeguard security and compliance. But a big part of the template is completely open then for engineers to configure themselves. Things related to triggering certain tests that they might want to do, things related to their release orchestration, steps in their canary process, how big they want those steps. Those are the things we then allow them to configure themselves. So we kind of provide this freedom with the guardrails that we care about as a company to set. Another pillar is metrics. I think every talk so far has mentioned DORA metrics, so I'm going to do it too. DORA metrics, very obvious place to start, but there's a lot of other metrics that are also critical. It's both, I care about these metrics for my developer experience team, so that we understand where there are potential bottlenecks in our environment, where there's potentially quality issues, adoption issues, so that we can prioritize those areas and then continue and have a feedback loop of assessing, did our changes reach the right effect. But it's also, I also want to make these metrics available to the engineers, my customers, and their leaders. Because when you have freedom with guardrails, if there's freedom still, then you need to give engineers the data so that they can decide how they want to use that freedom, so that they can have make their own choices related to their testing and release strategy. And there's, besides DORA metrics, a very focused area, but in developer experience, I also care a lot about metrics related to adoption. It's a bit of a vanity metric in the beginning, like, hey, are developers using the tools that we've developed to them? But it's also good to know with adoption, like, how is it staying up to date? Like, have they adopted the latest versions of libraries that we prescribe? But also the throughput are really important metrics. How many builds are being created? How many times is a deployment triggered? How many merge requests are being submitted? Kind of the quality of that, like, do things fail and pass? How many vulnerabilities are found? And of course, speed. You want to understand how long do developers stay in certain stages. Kind of segueing off the previous talk related to security and compliance. Of course, most businesses have some sort of regulatory compliance, but of course we all want to have a safe and secure product and our data also. And this is really something that should be embedded, ideally, from the ground up in the developer workflow. Shoehorning in security and compliance controls afterwards in tools is painful and usually doesn't lead to the best and the smoothest developer experience. All these things are commonly referred to as kind of shifting left, where you kind of put security and compliance checks at the right place early in the developer process and provide that feedback at that point. And then the last pillar, kind of the roof over our developer experience house. Like at the bottom, we have the customer-focused culture, but we also need to have a leadership culture that supports developer experience. You cannot create a great developer experience in an organization only bottom up. You need support to drive forward the change. As I mentioned before too, certain parts of developer experience take effort. It should be somebody's job, so they will then require funding, which you will need leadership support for. I also mentioned, like, sometimes developer experience results into changes for engineers, changes to how they work, expansions or limitations in freedom or tool choices. You need leadership to reinforce the message about this so that it gets adopted and accepted. And lastly, developer experience is also a culture, and we want this leadership also to enforce a culture of an importance of developer experience, both from a productivity, but also a developer happiness. Now, I want to talk about a case that we had Booking in our developer experience space related to how we build software. We didn't used to have a standard way of creating builds, creating release artifacts when we moved to Kubernetes. We kind of let developers take care of this themselves, put it in Artifactory for deployment, and that was the way forward. So there's not good support, no standardization, and we lacked a lot of visibility. This was not ideal from a compliance point of view, and this sometimes required teams to, during an audit cycle, manually provide like overviews of like, hey, these are all the deployments that they've done. Not great. But we also lacked visibility on tools that were being used, how long builds were taking, kind of all the performance aspects, sort of flying a bit blind. Additionally, of course, we wanted to integrate some tools in this build process for security needs, like vulnerability scanning, code analysis, and that integrating that in a process that doesn't really exist, where there's no unified tooling, also, yeah, not a good situation to be in. So we developed something called Common Build. Not a very imaginative name, but it kind of does what it says. It's a unified way of triggering builds. And we defined this together with our engineering community and leadership. We talked to them about like, hey, what are the things that you care about in your build process? And what are the things also that you're willing to let go, where we can be more standardized? And we did the same with leadership. We talked to all the different stakeholders like security, compliance, change management, to come up with this solution. In the end, it's not very complex. It's a set of GitLab pipelines that are triggered always at the same time when a merge request is finished, and it ends when your artifact is in Artifactory. Now, this unified solution meant that we could support it well. This is a small graph of how we were able to reduce the build time, which is quite drastic. Over a 2-month period, we're able to, because we had better visibility, we're able to improve this build time. And then because it was the unified solution, this was a big change and a big win for all engineers. And we were opinionated where it matters. So we were required, everybody has to use trigger builds a certain way. We're all going to use service accounts a certain way. But where we gave developers freedom is how they generate their artifact. Like a lot of Java engineers like Maven, some like Gradle, some even like Bazel. In a Node, they like NX and Yarn. And we're fine with that. Like that's their call. We provide some guidance, but they can pick this. This is something that they cared about. And we, not so much, essentially. Visibility, that was a huge win. Like we got so much views on how it was being adopted. There were no more need for manual audit trails. We could see the performance and then optimize it, as I've shown. We know exactly the throughput, how many builds are going through, their success rate, how long it takes, and we have insights in quality that we get from all these scanners. Because that was also, it's easily expandable. Since everybody triggered builds the same way, we run them the same way, we could integrate SonarQube easily. We're integrating SNCC now for static code analysis. We're integrating sysdig for image scanning, all kind of standardized. It's very easy now for security and compliance to kind of experiment with different tooling, different integrations, while getting feedback on how that impacts the productivity and how long it takes to create builds. So kind of what I want you to take away from this, like developer experience is quickly worth investing it. If you just assess kind of, hey, what does my workflow look like? Where do I see opportunities to improve this? If you extrapolate this out to the time that it saves ultimately, that easily turns into a number of FTEs, a number of people that you could hire to kind of fill this. And then it becomes kind of almost a waterfall. That team will then be able to spot other areas, opportunities for change and improvements. It will make your costly developers in your organization more productive and happier about this. And really, the cost outweigh the benefits quickly. When you invest in developer experience, try to treat it as a product. Don't make this a side job. Really invest in product management for this to design and operate as well. And the 7 pillars that I talked about, I think they can really help you to think about how you would want to develop and invest in it. Thank you.